All right, so welcome once again, everyone. This is the ClearAdmit MBA Application Overview webinar series. We're going to get started with the webinar. We have 5 amazing schools. I'm going to moderate today's session. My name is Graham. I'm the co-founder of ClearAdmit, and that's really all you need to know about me. I always like to say that. Let's introduce each of our panelists, though, briefly, just to get started here. So first up, we're going to hear from Meg Roundy. She's the Associate Director of Full-Time MBA Admissions over at Berkeley Haas. Hi, Meg.
Hi, Graham. Nice to see you all.
Yeah, appreciate you joining us this week. We're also going to hear from Antonio Williams, who's recruiting manager at Georgia Tech Scheller College of Business. Hey, Antonio.
Graham, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. We also are fortunate today to have Katy Radoll, who is the director of full-time MBA admissions and student recruitment over at UNC's Kenan-Flagler School. Hey, Katy.
Hey, Graham. Hi, everyone.
And we also have Christian West, who joins us. He's the Senior Director of Global Recruitment at University of Virginia's Darden School of Business. Hi, Christian.
Graham, hi. So grateful to be with you all.
Now, we're thrilled to have you. And last but not least, we have Brent Nagamine, who's the Director of MBA Admissions at the Foster School of Business at the University of Washington in Seattle. Hi, Brent.
Hey, Graham, and everyone, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, so as everyone can see, a great group of panelists. We're going to dive right in. We have a bunch of stuff to get through. And the first question, I want to just kind of go around the group here and find out what you would identify as your MBA program's core values. And then if you would, tell us how those values inform the way that your team approaches the admissions process. So we'll start with you, Meg. We're just going to go alphabetical by school name. So Meg, yeah, take us through this. What are some of those values at Haas and how do they shape the admissions process?
Yeah, so great question. And thankfully at Haas, we have defining leadership principles, which really share our culture and have people allow people to find their fit. Is this the right place for them? And those 4 defining leadership principles are question the status quo, confidence without attitude, beyond yourself, student always. And so define our culture. Those really define our core values. We're looking for people who those 4 defining leadership principles feel like them, that it's in their heart and their soul. And so how we're looking at it in an admissions process, really, are you showcasing that you fit within that culture and that our culture fits within you? And it doesn't have to be all 4 principles, but it very much is, are these really showing up throughout your applications process? Are you going beyond yourself? Are you showing that you're a student always, that you question the status quo, there's got to be a better way, or that you're confident without attitude? So that's really, we're looking for those big pieces for our culture fit.
Okay, that's really helpful. And I will say, the reason we ask this question is because most of you talk about these values, on your websites. And I feel like invariably these values are kind of reflected in, the way that you look at the application, or even in some cases, the essay questions you're asking, et cetera. So if you're tuning in and joining us, that's why we're asking this. And I should also just take a moment here, just one housekeeping item for everyone. Each of our panelists has been kind enough to agree to do a little Zoom breakout at the end of the main session. So if you have questions for any of our panelists at these schools, just stick around because at the end they're going to break out and you can actually get some time with them. So stay tuned. And for that reason, we don't really take questions during the main part here. But let's now turn to Antonio over at Georgia Tech Scheller. How about you guys? What are those core values and how do they inform the process?
Yeah, absolutely. So our core values are transparency, accessibility, and community oriented. We definitely want students who are supportive of one another and can contribute to our program. And we are also looking for students to support classmates in order to be successful. It shows up within our admissions and interview process because we are trying to always enroll students with that particular mindset. Our students are competitive outside of our program, but when it comes to being inside the program, getting immersed into the full-time MBA, they are very supportive of one another within the program. I know a lot of other programs may be, very competitive in nature, but our program isn't like that as far as the community building. So again, within the admissions process, we ask those type of teamwork and collaborative questions throughout the process. And the one thing that we always like to highlight as far as the community is concerned is that you may be going through the full-time program by yourself, but you will not be doing it alone.
Oh, that's really well said. Yeah, appreciate that. Let's turn to Katy at UNC Kenan-Flagler. Do you want to walk us through this?
Sure. Thanks, Graham. So at UNC Kenan-Flagler, our core values are often referred around campus as the 4 I's. They are innovation, integrity, inclusion, and impact. And you see these show up not only through our evaluation and admissions process, but truly every day on campus, in the classroom, and how our students, our faculty, our staff, our different stakeholders show up and live that Carolina way. In our evaluation process, we will ask you outright which of these 4 I's resonate with you most, and look to unpack that a little bit with you, both through a written component, but also in the interview, right, where we can peel back the layers, learn a little bit more about how you are living up to that value of integrity, or how you've had impact maybe on the people around you or on the community that you work in. We think that those are great indicators of the kind of student and ultimately the kind of alumni of UNC Kenan-Flagler you'll be in the future.
Yeah, and I think, this just again underlines what's great about everyone joining us today is that, if you're tuning into this webinar, you're, out in front on the application process because, deadlines aren't typically until the fall for most of these programs, but it does give you that moment to sort of really get to know each of these programs' core values. And, here's a direct example with Katy citing, that UNC is actually taking their core values and there's an essay question where they ask you about them specifically. So do your homework and get up to speed on the values of these programs. And to Meg's earlier point, and Antonio, figuring out like where you fit in and whether you'd be a good part of the community makes sense. I mean, this is also, it's a two-way process, right? So, but without further ado, let's turn to Christian at UVA Darden. Christian, do you want to tell us a little bit about the values at Darden and how they impact the admissions process?
Yes, thanks, Graham. So Darden's part of Darden's mission is to develop responsible leaders through a transformational learning experience. So I'll pull out two phrases there: responsible leaders. One of the key areas that we focus on in our program is business ethics. This is manifested in two research centers: one, our Olson Center for Applied Ethics, and our newest research center, the La Crosse Center for Ethical AI Research. So there's a benefit to coming to an institution like the University of Virginia, which is a public university, because one of the considerations we challenge our students to make in their discussion is business for the public good. That other phrase, transformational learning experience, we are a general management program that attracts students from a wide range of pre-MBA professional experiences. So if you're looking to pivot, if you identify as a non-traditional MBA student, Darden would be a really good fit because we have a core curriculum in that first year rooted in the case method of experiential learning that will give you those broad-based business skills and facilitate whatever you intend to do post-MBA. How does that translate to the admissions process? Those are things that we're looking to glean through the application. So you'll see in our essay questions us trying to assess your motivation for certain industry areas. How do you demonstrate care and concern for the communities that business would impact? And then also, even in our interview, we ask questions about teamwork and collaboration to ensure that when you enter the classroom, that is discussion based. You're able to receive feedback and relate to the perspectives of your classmates that makes the learning experience so much more robust.
Wonderful. All right. Yeah, I appreciate you shedding light on that. Let's turn, Brent, you've been very patient. I know you're at the end of the alphabet. But Brent, yeah, tell us a little bit about the values at Foster and yeah, how do they shape your team's, view of the admissions process?
Save the best for last. I think that at Foster we have, we've got great leaders, we've got folks who are really smart, we've got people who are really ambitious go-getters, but I always like to say that the unifying value, the values that I think really kind of connect everyone within our community are the sense of collaboration and the sense of resilience. I always like to make the argument that, every single student at Foster really embodies those two things. And those absolutely show up in the admission process, but not necessarily super directly. Sometimes we may ask a question in the interview about what does collaboration mean to you, or what does resilience mean to you. But I think oftentimes we're trying to ask about some of the underlying tendencies and values and patterns that lead to those things. There's not a single way to be a good collaborator. There's not a single way to show resilience, but we are going to try to understand what those two things mean to you, and hopefully make sure that there is still some general alignment under those two values. And I think as far as the admission process goes, a lot of that comes through with our interview.
Okay, got it. So what I want to do next actually is, you know, I think all of you differ, right? I mean, these are, 5 different amazing MBA programs and you all differ, but these are some of the basic application components that many of you will require, right? Candidates have to fill out a form. They have to pay a fee, although some of you have fee waivers in certain instances. They've got to get you transcripts of like their undergraduate experience, in some cases a standardized test score, or at least a request to waive a test if you allow for that. Resume, essays. Some of you have like short answers that people overlook, or they, it's part of the application form and they think they've written all the essays, but then there are a couple little short answers that they need to provide. And then most of you have recommendation letters and an interview, and in some cases a language exam. So these are like the main components. But what I thought would be fun to do is have each of you take a look on screen at kind of your program's components, and then tell us like something different about your program, or something that's just a little, a quirk, or just a piece of your application process that you really want to highlight for our attendees today. And so again, we'll go back to the top of the alphabet. And Meg, I want to turn to you. I think we have a slide here with actually Haas's main requirements. Now, I will say, this is like, we're kind of in the transition right now from this season of admissions where people have been applying to start this fall, and heading into next season where, the deadlines will be coming up in the fall. So, feel free, any of you, to correct me if we're going through and you see something on this list that is not going to be part of your process next year, or if there's something that's going to be new. But basically, this is what you required last year, Meg, at Haas. And yeah, take us through like what's something that you want to highlight here.
I think actually I'd love to highlight 2 things. One, for the video essay. So we do have a video essay, and the question we ask is actually, which defining leadership principle resonates with you the most? And I think what's really valuable about this video essay is not that you not only to answer this question and about how the culture fits with you, how you feel connected to it, but we're also looking at, how are you presenting? How do you deal with if you make a mistake in a video, which has happened, and that comes through to us? And then I'm looking at, okay, how do you recover? How do you come back? Because that happens in life, and that is okay. The video doesn't have to be perfect, but we want you to answer the question. We're looking for the story. We're looking to get a little bit more of a view on you. And so this is such a wonderful part of our application. The other thing, and this is really quickly, is we do have an interview, and it's by invitation. What I will say about this is the entire application is very human-centered. We're reading it like human beings are reading your application, multiple ones, and we're discussing it as a team, as an admissions committee. So it's really important to know that you may not get an interview right away. We often have interviews rolling right up to the deadline of decisions, which is always fun. But just know that this is a human process, and we're getting to know you. We're spending time on each application, giving you the time that you deserve. So just some of it is you work hard and you apply, and then just be patient. And we will get to you, and just know that interviews are coming slowly, but they're coming. So yeah. Just good luck and enjoy, and be authentic.
So I'm really glad you mentioned this, because as some of our audience may or may not know, some schools have interviews that sort of trickle out, as Meg's kind of describing, like the committee's going through and they offer invitations, and they just come out in not randomly, but it's not like there's sort of some here, some there. Other schools have like on this day, we're going to tell you whether you get an interview or not, and they all come out at once, right? So just be careful as you're going through this process not to get stressed. Like, you need to know the rules of each school, because if you're expecting, in this case, Berkeley, to issue all their invites at once, or you see someone someone, post on the internet they got an interview, it doesn't necessarily mean anything in the case of Berkeley because they're coming, little by little, right? So I appreciate you kind of highlighting that, Meg. And again, this is funny how the video is directly connected to the values that you guys have. But let's turn now. I want to do the same thing with Antonio over at Georgia Tech Scheller. Here's what we have that you guys used last season. Yeah, so take us through. Is there something that you want to highlight here the way that Meg did with Berkeley?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two things that I actually want to highlight. So within our application, there is a 10 facts essay that, every applicant has to complete. And I always like to tell individuals that this 10 facts shouldn't be like an extension of your resume. It is an opportunity for us and your classmates to get to know you. And it allows get to know you holistically outside of school and work. And these facts are shared during orientation. So, this is where we like to get to know the real you, the authentic you. Anything that isn't shared, within the other essays or within your resume, this is your opportunity to really shine and for us to get to know who you are. And that essay, it may be good to get like, a family member or a partner to help with that part, just so you can pick out some cool and unique facts about yourself. And then the second thing that I would like to highlight is that during our interview, we actually have a current student sit in on the interviews. And just like with any other interview, it's a two-way street. So any student or applicant who is in the interview process, you should definitely take advantage of that. This gives you the opportunity to ask the student questions. What classes do they like? How's the program? And what things they can expect once they, get immersed into the program. So those are two things I would like to highlight.
Yeah, and that sounds like a great opportunity, to sit with a current student. And, we always talk about when you go to an interview for a business school, I think students are the easiest ones to talk to because they're in the program and you can just ask them questions about what it's like and, what are they studying or what have they been doing outside of the classroom. So that's great. It sounds like a really great opportunity. And then with your essay, the 10 facts, that just seems like a nice opportunity to share stuff that, as you say, it's not resume stuff, it's more kind of fun facts. So that seems like a really interesting opportunity so that people can get to know who you really are. So that's fun. That sounds like a lot of fun. All right, let's turn to let's turn to Katy now. Katy, take us through again. We have a slide here with your application components. Take us through.
Yeah, no problem. So I wanted to highlight also the essay section of our application. We currently have 2 essays, and I'll say there's a hidden third essay, which I highly encourage folks to think about. It is completely optional, but is most often the area of the application that we get to know the most personal side of you. We're constantly asking for professional examples or impact on your community or the people around you, but there is a secret third essay in there, and that is some of the most fun information we get to read about you ahead of moving forward in the process. Our first essay is our introduction to you. It's why you're here. Why are you thinking about getting an MBA? And what are you planning to use this MBA for? What do you think is on the horizon? One of my favorite components of that essay is knowing and understanding your plan B in a world that is constantly evolving and changing, and we're being asked to be more and more comfortable with being uncomfortable. This is a place where we can start to measure that, start to understand where you faced ambiguity before, where you've had chutes and ladders in your career path, and how comfortable are you with those changes on the horizon and sort of undertaking that growth opportunity. We also do have an interview, much like the other schools have said. It's a sign that you're moving forward in the process, and we do issue those on a rolling basis across each of our 4 rounds.
And would you be willing to just comment briefly on like who does the interviews? So if I get invited, am I sitting down with you or a current student or an alum?
Yeah, great question. You might be sitting with me, but all of our interviews are conducted by our admissions committee, which is made up of my admissions team for full-time MBA, assistant director, associate director, and then myself. And then we do have a group of professional readers and interviewers that have been with the school somewhere between 5 and 10 years in either a reader or an interviewer role. And so by the time you get to admissions committee at the end, you've been evaluated and read, and I sometimes say touched by multiple people in this process.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, thanks for elaborating on that. Let's turn to Christian at UVA Darden. Again, we've got a slide. So far, no one said anything about us having, old information on the slide. So I'm guessing that things are pretty consistent year to year. It sounds like so far, or that you guys just haven't met yet to figure out if you're making changes for next year. But yeah, Christian, take us through. What do you want to highlight?
Yeah, Graham, we're in the final decision making for changes for the next year. So I don't anticipate any radical changes compared to
Okay.
what folks see here. But I like to highlight two things. You'll see that we do provide a standardized test waiver, and I want to explain the way that that works. It is by a separate application before you submit your application for the purposes of admission. The test waiver is a really good opportunity for folks who are able to demonstrate strong quantitative preparation either through their academic accomplishments, their professional job responsibilities, or professional certifications like the CFA, CPA. For the test waiver, we just require your transcripts, your resume, and then we have some questions around your quantitative preparation. You'll hear back from us, yes or no. If provided the waiver, you just have to submit all the other elements of the application. The other element of our application I wanted to highlight is our unique round, early action. So it is our first round. The deadline is generally around the beginning of September. And for all subsequent rounds, interviews are by invitation only. But for early action, we have an open interview period that if you're applying early action, you can schedule your interview at your own leisure. So if that's an area of the application that you feel like you would really excel in, and you want to ensure that opportunity for yourself, early action allows you to do that.
Okay, yeah, terrific. I'm glad that you highlighted that. That seems like a really nice opportunity. I see we're getting some questions down in the chat, and I just want to remind anyone who's joined late that each of our panelists is going to break out into school-specific little breakout rooms, so you can go and ask questions of any of our panelists individually at the end. In the meantime, let's continue forward. We have Brent from University of Washington Foster. Take us through your materials. What is it that you'd like to highlight here?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things. So we don't have a test waiver, but we are test optional. And what this means is that there's not a separate application to apply without a test score. We give that power to every candidate, and you can choose on your own whether you think you're putting your best foot forward with or without a score. Kind of going back to what Christian said, though, or using a lot of that logic, I do want to clarify that there's a difference between a complete application and a competitive application. And I think that a competitive application without a test score is one that embodies a lot of quantitative readiness, probably also through the transcripts, the resume, or professional accomplishments and certifications. So that's entirely up to you as a candidate to choose if you'd like to apply with or without a score. Just note that we still want to see that evidence of academic readiness, even if you're choosing not to apply with a score. Another quick change I'll make, it's not a change to the number of requirements, but folks who may have looked at our previous essay prompts, and I do want to clarify that we are changing our second essay. It used to be focused exclusively on resilience, and now it's going to be opened up and focused a little bit more on the mission of the Foster School. And we're going to ask folks to kind of dissect our mission statement and let us know which of those pieces most resonates with you. So that will be a change to one of our essays going forward, and you'll see that posted on our website probably sometime this week. The final thing I'll note is about our interview process, which I think is pretty interesting. This is another change that we started last year. We've seen, I think, pretty positive feedback from both our staff and our applicants as well. So we're going to continue it, and it's really mixing up who's in our interview pool. We currently have admissions staff and current students who are doing interviews. What I really want to clarify, though, is that those assignments are entirely random. And I do want to make sure that nobody worries, like, if I sign up for an interview and I see that it's with a student, that means something different than if I get assigned to someone who's with admission staff. We basically enter our calendar availability, and when applicants go into the interview scheduling system, it'll just assign you to whoever is available based on the time that you select. So that selection is random, and I don't want folks to worry that there's a distinction between that. But it does give folks a pretty interesting opportunity to connect with different stakeholders throughout the process. And of course, there's a lot of rigorous training that goes into it so that our students are asking the same sorts of questions and giving us the same sort of feedback in our admissions committee.
I'm glad that you mentioned that because I think there are a number of schools who use a mix of interviewer type, whether it's an admissions officer, a current student, or an alum, or even as Katie was mentioning, I think, people who are kind of what we would call contract readers or, people who interview for the school and, in a kind of part-time way. It doesn't mean it's meaningless. And I think candidates spend a lot of time on the internet sort of speculating, oh, I got a student, it means something, but it doesn't. I mean, these are all done the same way. Everyone's been given the same training. So I'm really glad you highlighted that. Brent, if I can just stay with you 1 second, you have a
Yeah.
video interview, and
Oh, yeah.
is this like, I think this is relevant for a lot of schools. So I just wondered if you just mentioned, like, what does that mean exactly? It means that when I'm applying, I press a button and I record a video, or is it after I've applied, or like, can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, really good question. And I probably should have highlighted it to start with.
Oh no, it's fine.
The video interview for Foster is a little bit different than some other places. We are going to wait until our application deadline, and about 1 or 2 days after the deadline, we're going to invite everyone who has applied to complete a separate video interview. So it is a different system and it's in a different platform, but every single applicant will be invited to complete this. It's pretty quick. It's pretty easy. You're just going to set up this platform and record your response to 2 questions. And we'll use those responses as a part of our initial review when we're deciding who to move forward in our process.
Okay, terrific. So that means that in this case, your team reading a file, they'll get to see every candidate. I mean, it's a video, but they'll get to see every candidate, answering these 2 questions.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
that's
should
terrific.
actually maybe clarify one other thing, which is that I did the Foster MBA myself. I had to do a video interview. I unfortunately couldn't admit myself, so I did have to apply and go through it. I will note that being fully transparent, it can feel a little bit awkward to record a video response like this, and there's not an opportunity in our platform to re-record your answer. But because of that, I do want to stress that we're not expecting perfection. We want you to take it seriously. We want you to approach it with professionalism. But if you have a verbal typo, we're not going to hold that against you too much. It's really just an opportunity to get a quick snapshot of who you are, your communication style, some of your story, some of your values. But we're not expecting perfection.
All right. So no Hollywood production standards, that kind of thing. Yeah, that makes
Right.
sense. Excellent. All right. I'm glad that I asked you that because I think it's helpful for a number of programs that have these types of video things. All right. Now what we're going to do is we have some questions that came in from the audience, and we kind of filtered through them and picked some of the ones that we thought were really interesting. So we'll go back to you, Meg, at Berkeley. Outside activities. Now, I think when you're an applicant, you know that you need, academics and you need to have worked for a while. But then there's a sort of amorphous thing of like schools asking about your outside activities. Do you volunteer? Do you play sports? Like, what are you doing with your spare time? And I think it can be a little hard to get a handle on. And I wondered, like, yeah, what are you looking for there? And do the activities have to be like volunteer work, or are other passions and involvements valuable for you to see as an admissions reader?
So I think the latter, that other passions and involvements are really, really valuable. So we do look at extracurriculars at Berkeley Haas, and we're looking at those in the sense of, and I kind of put it as, what do you do outside of your 9 to 5? And I know that 9 to 5 doesn't really exist anymore, but I think it's a nice way to to put it out there. And this may be some leadership, even that you're doing within your company, but running an affinity group, or leadership that you did when you were in your undergrad. Maybe you were the president of your fraternity or sorority. I'm also looking at, are you leading a pickleball league? Are you managing people? Are you running something outside, again, of your day-to-day? And a lot of this shows the beyond yourself aspect of our defining leadership principles, but it also gives us another picture of you. We're looking at people who are well-rounded, that aren't just one thing, because you're continuing to grow, of course, in your career path, but you're also adding value to this community in so many different ways. And again, and I say pickleball just because I think it's funny, but you pickleball, great, soccer, whatever, football, sorry. But there are so many opportunities for you to show us yourself, to show us your leadership. And again, for Haas, we're looking at that beyond yourself aspect. So all of it goes into that holistic review of your application.
Excellent. I like to think of this also as, if you just want to think in a very utilitarian way, I always think of, MBA programs wanting students who can come in and obviously survive academically, if ideally thrive academically, who are going to graduate and go off and do interesting things, get a job, et cetera. But while they're there are all these clubs. I mean, all the business schools, you all brag about, you have all these different clubs and affinity groups, and there's so much happening on the campus outside of the classroom. And so I feel like when you're applying to these programs, it's just really smart to show that, how are you going to get involved? And the best way to do that is to show how you're currently involved. If you're a runner or a pickleball player, whatever whatever it is, it's a great opportunity to share that. So thanks, Meg, for shedding light on that. Now I have a question for Antonio at Georgia Tech. Do you have advice for someone who has limited work experience? I know most of you require some amount of work experience, but there are always candidates who are applying with like 2 years or less of work experience. And I just wondered, like, how can those candidates stand out in this process? Because I know, when you're dealing with someone who has 5 or 6 or more years of experience, you might be looking at certain traits that they have or experiences. But take us through, what would a younger, kind of less experienced candidate need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. A younger or less experienced candidate would need to show impact at work. Explain how you may have improved a process or implemented a new idea. Show maturity as well. You'll be able to demonstrate that, of course, through some of your examples through your essays, but more importantly, within the interview, we'll be able to sort of kind of sift through that as well. And this is the opportunity for your recommenders to be helpful in this part of the process. I always like to tell individuals who are applying to our program is that your letters of recommendation can can be do or die, honestly. There are sometimes when we see letters of recommendation where you can actually tell where the person didn't know the candidate. So when you are picking your people to write your recommendation letters for you, make sure they are in support of you in pursuing an MBA program, and make sure that they know you and can speak to your capabilities, because that can definitely be a determining factor when you have less experience.
All right, terrific. So what I want to do actually, so Katy, you're going to be the yang to Antonio's yin, because he talked about young. I want you to talk about older candidates. There are people who apply, they're like 30, or, they have a lot of experience. Any advice for this crowd?
Yeah, I mean, I would say same, but different, right? Your experience is an asset. It's a strength in the classroom, and bringing that real world experience in, something to adapt to the learning to you, will really drive a conversation amongst your peers and really elevate the learning environment in the classroom. I think you do have to be having an honest conversation with yourself, depending on the schools that you're excited to apply to. At Kenan-Flagler, it's a range of years of experience, about 2 upwards of 10 years of experience. And so you do need to be honest with yourself if that is the peer group you want to learn around for the next 2 years. There's so many opportunities for you to continue to flex that leadership muscle and show that leadership strength through your application materials and what you'll bring to the classroom. But certainly think about how you're going to show up on campus. Much like Antonio mentioned, it is a great learning experience, but also knowing that humility that you're going to bring to the room to learn from the folks that are on the other end of the spectrum, right? What can you learn from someone who may be coming in with more technical experience at 2 to 3 years of experience, and then vice versa?
Terrific. Yeah, and actually, I should have. So I'll just kind of keep both Antonio and Katy, since we're talking about these younger and older. I'm sort of thinking about how, you know, can a younger candidate, if they have like really stellar academics, does that sort of help, because they may have less to show on the work experience front? Or, and similarly, Katy, on your side of it, does an older applicant get a little bit more of a free pass because they've been out of school for so long that you're maybe understanding that, so I don't know. So let's start with Antonio. Do younger candidates having really great stats, does that help, or or these things are siloed and you're just looking at the work experience for that?
No, it definitely does help because given whatever their, undergrad major would have been, if it's showing great rigor, that can definitely help because it lets us know that you can get through a rigorous program. So if you do have great stats and a great GPA, it can only help.
Okay. And Katy, how about you? How do you look at an older candidate who's, they've maybe been out of the classroom for a really long time? Are you saying, wow, I need a really good test score because I need to know what they'd be like today in the classroom, or is there some leeway?
I think there's some leeway. We're looking at two different buckets, right? The academic readiness. I need to ensure you're going to be successful in a rigorous quantitative classroom setting. And sometimes we see that in a more experienced student in the kind of work that they're doing, the fast-paced environment they're working in. Is their work still continue to be analytical? How are they using data to drive decisions or to promote decision making? So we can find it in both places. Certainly some students are going to spike in one over the other. And I think that's true of the entire evaluation process, whether you have 2 years or 10 years of experience. We're looking at sort of where do you have the little spikes and to support that you're going to be successful as a student.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, thanks for that sort of impromptu questions here, but I just wanted to dig a little deeper on these. Christian, I want to turn to you. This is like a classic question that we have for you, which is, people submit their file and there's a typo, or they're reading it over after the fact because they're, waiting for an answer and they're bored. And so they're looking at it again and they see something that's like wrong, a typo. What do you feel that, like, should somebody reach out to you about that? And then more broadly, like, what if I retake a test or I get a promotion at work? Like, how does your team feel about candidates kind of staying in touch with updates if something has happened to their candidacy after they've applied?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. So regarding the typo, what I will say is that your application is a reflection of your thought and intention and your consideration of the school. It is a reflection of your professionalism. So we do expect that when you submit your application, that it is grammatically correct. The essays are grammatically correct. You've thoroughly reviewed it. You've sat back before you hit that submit button and have answered all of the questions thoroughly. Sometimes I caution candidates, don't mull over that missing period or that misspelled word. If you email us about it, you actually might be drawing more attention to it than we gave it. We understand mistakes happen. However, if there is a substantive change, for example, I've seen candidates who have put in their graduation date wrong. And in reviewing their application, I'm like, hey, what's going on here? I'll email the applicant and say, hey, this caught my attention. Can you please explain? Those are things that may change the direction of our review and something that you should correct. Other substantive updates, a change in dramatic change in job responsibilities, a promotion. Maybe you started a professional certification or continued learning course before you submitted the application. It's now complete, and you want to share with us the certificate of completion. Those would all be substantive updates. Most schools will give you direction on how to submit those. For example, here at Darden, you will see in your application portal an application update form for you to just submit. Others might just want you to send it to their inbox, but think of it as a substantive update that will enhance your application. We don't mind hearing from you on those.
All right, terrific. Yeah, I really appreciate you underlying that. And so I think what I'm hearing is, don't sweat the typo. I mean, obviously check your work before you submit, but this point that you made about if you email about a period or a mistyped word, you're more likely to be calling the team's attention to something that maybe they didn't even notice in the first place. And if they did, there's nothing that can really be done. Whereas what you're talking about afterwards in terms of a substantive update, that makes a lot of sense. So appreciate you shedding light on that. We have another question here, and this one is for Brent at Foster. Brent, business schools often pitch as this like great place to engineer a career change. So I'm kind of wondering, what kind of advice would you have to offer a candidate who wants to pitch the committee on a significant career shift? And by significant, I'm kind of referring to what sometimes people call the triple jump, that you want to change geography, industry, and function. So any tips on this? Because it can be challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, I do want to start with the premise of this, and I want to affirm that I think an MBA is probably the best opportunity to make a big pivot like that. The skills that we're teaching in a program like this, the experiences we're giving you, I think that those are so ubiquitous that there's probably not any other opportunity that will give you the chance to make a big pivot. With that being said, the bigger the pivot, the harder it is, and I want to make sure folks are prepared for it. So my 3 pieces of advice for a particularly large pivot would be to, 1, do your homework. Come in knowing what options you have and what options are realistic. I think you can do that by networking with folks, looking at the people who are in the sort of jobs you're interested in and asking how they got there, making sure that there's a realistic pathway to get there based on the skills that you can leverage. But do your homework. That's number 1. Number 2, And I think this actually is similar, Katy, you in your application, you even ask about this as an essay question. But for number two, I'd say have a backup plan and be really prepared to talk about what your plan B is. I think the large theme there is that we need you to have flexibility so that if you come in and you're laser focused and you say, I'm over here and I want to get all the way over there. And if I can't make that pivot, the MBA is a complete wash for me. That's a little scary. But if you say, I'm over here and I want to get in that direction, and there are a couple different options that I'd be really excited for, I think that gives us a little bit more confidence that we can support you. So that's number two is have that backup plan, have flexibility. And the third thing I would say is really be prepared to express that you know what you're getting into. In the interview process, in the essays, be able to articulate the fact that you know it's going to be a hustle and that you're ready for that hustle. I think that gives us a lot of confidence that you're going to come in and you're not going to be surprised by the fact that you're going to have to really work hard. You're going to have to make sure that you're putting your foot to the floor and making this happen. And if we've got that confidence coming in, we're obviously a little bit more excited about our ability to support you.
Yeah, that's terrific advice. And I could not agree more that a business school is the absolute best place to engineer a career change. And also, though, that, even those who kind of say they know what they want to do coming in often pivot, after taking a few classes, they discover something and, they join a club and they're like, oh, wow, entrepreneurship through acquisition. I had no idea that was something that I could do, so there are all these different things that people end up doing. And we joke a lot in these sessions about how when you graduate, it's not as though the dean holds up the essay that you wrote where you said what your career goals were and doesn't let you graduate unless you're doing exactly what you said in the essay. So there's a lot of movement that happens. And I think, even if you're trying to engineer a triple jump, it makes sense to be flexible and think about the different ways you might be able to achieve that. All right. So what I want to do now, we have some kind of fun lightning round questions. And then all of our attendees, please stick around because our panelists are going to jump into some little Zoom breakouts and take your questions about their programs. And I know we've had a bunch of questions in the chat here. So clearly some folks have questions that you all can answer in the breakouts. Let's stay with you, Brent. We'll go backwards this time. So describe your admissions team in 3 words.
I think that we are really quite human. And human is the center of that.
All right, excellent. Christian, how would you describe the Darden admissions team in 3 words?
Yeah, dynamic, intentional, and fun.
All right. Katy, how about the Kenan-Flagler team?
Yeah, I would say person-centric, integrative, and values-based.
Okay. Antonio over at Scheller?
Empathetic, accessible, and forward-thinking.
Okay. And Meg, there are probably no adjectives left, but we're, this is the thing when you get through the alphabet backwards, we're going, how would you describe your team in 3 words?
Oh, I've got some adjectives. So, and I think someone already said this one, but collaborative, kind, and I'm going to go with rad because we're California.
It's California.
We're rad. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to stay with you, Meg, for our next lightning round question. And this one is, we talked about this. Sometimes candidates make a mistake, a typo, in this case, like using the wrong name of a school in an essay. But what's another admissions process don't that you would like to share?
Maybe this is on a higher level, but I think tell us the truth about you, and I say this in the sense of with your essays, be authentic, be honest. This is the advice I give to everyone because we're looking again to make sure you're a right fit, and you should be looking to make sure that we're a right fit. If you're saying what you think we want to hear, it really comes across as not authentic. We see that in the essays. And yeah, we want you to tell us what it is about you, that makes you tick. Can I share this real quick? One of our essays asks, what makes you feel most alive? And I'm always asked, well, what do you want to hear with that? And my response, who cares? Who cares what I want to hear? I want to hear what makes you feel most alive. You tell me what your response is. And honestly, people writing essays about Excel spreadsheets, making them feel alive and organized and structured. I've cried reading those, and you wouldn't think an Excel spreadsheet would make you cry. But so it's just that be authentic and be honest, because that's only going to set you up for the right path and the right school.
Yeah, I mean, this is maybe a terrible analogy, but I'm just thinking about if you're out on a date with someone, you wouldn't pretend to be the person that you think they want. You got to be yourself because you might end up being a partner to this person in the long term, right? So you're going to join this business school, you're going to be there for 2 years and then an alum beyond. So be yourself, right?
Yeah.
Antonio, I want to ask you, what's like another kind of something that just a pet peeve, something you don't recommend people do when they apply to business school?
Yeah, I mean, Meg literally took the words out of my mouth. I mean, um, I just think that maybe something, a theme across the board for everyone, be authentic, be yourself, tell the truth, because with you being honest and upfront, it opens the door for so many opportunities and it allows us to help navigate whatever it is that you're trying to do. So literally the same, be authentic and be your true self.
All right. Katie, how about you?
I think it sounds so simple, but follow the directions. I often read essays where I'm like, where's the answer, right? Is it answering the question that we're asking? We have so many similarities across all of our school's components. So ensure that you really are finding the right story for the right essay question. You have so many amazing experiences, and there's going to be plenty of time and other spots in the application to share those experiences and those successes with us. So number one piece of advice, follow the directions.
Yes, and that's echoed. We've done these, types of events for many years, and someone brings that up often. I mean, I think it's a real pet peeve if you're reading an essay and it hasn't answered the question, especially if you recognize that the question they're answering is one of your peer programs, essay question, right? That's always a terrible thing to do, to sort of shoehorn a response in because you're being lazy. So, all right, Christian, how about you? What's an admissions process don't over at Darden?
Yeah, Graham, not necessarily a don't, but I offer a word of caution. The use of generative AI for the purposes of essays. It's useful in a lot of ways, clarifying grammar, conciseness, but it's not great for idea generation in response to essays that are incredibly personal. To echo Meg and Antonio, we want to hear your authentic voice. We care a lot about who you are and what you would bring to our communities. If you use some of those tools to guide the idea generation of your essays, it might be missing that. So just use it in a thoughtful and appropriate way.
Yeah, that's terrific advice. I could not agree more. Brent, let's turn to you. What's something that you would tell people to avoid?
Scrambling. Christian took the words out of my mouth on that one.
Oh, okay.
I'll pivot a little bit and I'll say I think it's a really big missed opportunity when folks submit the same resume that they would otherwise submit within their industry for a job. There's an opportunity to really customize your resume to something that's going to be understandable and transferable to an MBA program. And I don't want you to pass that up simply because you've already got something that works well within your industry.
Yeah, that's terrific advice. And I would say, all the programmers out there or the military folks where your resume is currently loaded with like acronyms and stuff. I mean, it's just not relevant for, you have to figure out a way to sort of tell your story in the resume format that's for an admissions process, not to get you that job. And those are two different things. So, and there's lots of information about this on the internet. We even at ClearAdmit, we have like a little resume guide that's free to download and, shows you like what does a business school resume look like. So yeah, definitely do that homework because there's nothing worse than, you pick up a resume and if you're not a coder or hiring for someone in a certain role, like an engineering role, you have no idea what people are talking about. So keep that in mind. Last one, Brent, we'll stay with you and go backwards again through the alphabet. Just tell us about something that you're looking forward to that's coming up on campus. And I know it's kind of the end of the school year, but maybe there's some summer stuff or maybe even, I don't know, graduation, or I'm not sure what's happening now, but.
Yeah, I mean, the one that really comes to my mind is graduation. It's such a big celebration for us. We're a pretty small community, but graduation combines a few of our different MBA programs. It brings in so many professors, community members. It's just such a fun celebration. So that's on my mind, and to keep it lightning, I won't elaborate beyond that.
All right, excellent. That sounds like fun. Christian, how about you? Something that you're looking forward to happening on campus at Darden?
Yeah, we have just begun the process of building residential communities just for MBA students. They're located right next to our academic building and faculty office building. So they just started the utilities, but I'm looking forward to seeing those come out of the ground. They will be finished in 2027, I'm told.
Oh, wow. That's terrific. Excellent. Katie, how about you? Something exciting happening on campus there?
Yeah, so in a similar vein, we have a brand new building that is set to launch and open in the fall of 2025. 5. So administrative offices will open just before the end of the first semester. And then all of our students will begin taking classes in the new building called Bell Hall, which is right next to our campus. We all share our courtyard in January of 2026. So a little less construction and a lot more space, which will be really exciting.
Oh, that sounds great. Antonio, how about you? Something fun happening at Georgia Tech?
Absolutely. We have a brand new state-of-the-art building as well. Students will begin taking classes in January. So spring 2026, we are very excited for the new state-of-the-art building.
Oh, excellent. All right. So lots of construction happening
Yes,
on these
very
campuses.
busy.
Yeah. Meg, how about you?
I'm actually going to take it back to the admissions team in the sense of we are all starting to prepare for summer travel. And I think most of us in all of our schools are, in the sense of we do a lot of recruiting, we do a lot of worldwide and international and US travel in the summer. And so preparing for that, connecting with alumni who are where we're going so that we can have them be part of our panels or with us. But I would just encourage all of you to look at where are our schools going and how might you connect, whether it's in Africa, I saw this, Asia, Europe, all over the world. So please connect with us because we'd love to see you.
Wonderful. All right, so that kind of concludes the main session. What we're going to do now is I'd like to invite our panelists to head backstage, but I first would like to sincerely thank each of you. So Meg, Katy, Antonio, Christian, and Brent, so much appreciative of your time and great answers. I mean, gosh, I feel like I learned a ton and I've been doing this forever. So head backstage. We're going to get you set up into your breakouts. The rest of the audience, stay with me for a minute because we want to give them a break so they can get a glass of water and also just to set up their breakouts. So I do want to thank all of you for joining us today. And just so you know, we're doing this again tomorrow with another group of great schools. And now I'm going to totally forget, but I think it's Yale and Wharton and Stanford. And there's a few others taking part tomorrow. I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm not going to say any other names, but you can join us tomorrow, same time, same place. And then the other thing, I would just encourage you to take advantage of clearedmit.com. It's a free website. It's an amazing community for anyone navigating kind of the admissions process. Again, all the advice and resources on the site are totally free. We're not selling you stuff. And so there's Livewire, which is a tool that is a live feed of kind of admissions results. You can post your profile on Applywire and get advice from the community. There's just so many things. We have a weekly podcast that airs every Monday. And we also have, this is kind of newer, but we have a little AI bot that we've trained on all the content from our site. So you can kind of ask questions, even simple stuff like, about, questions about like how to approach your recommenders when they start to write references for you. There's just a world of knowledge that's there and at your fingertips via the little Ask Clear Admit bot. But again, I really appreciate everyone making time. I know our panelists are going to stick around now for at least 20 minutes, maybe half an hour or so to take your questions. I encourage you to bounce into those breakouts. They're all going to be set up here. I should mention you do need to be in Zoom, like not on the website, but via the app or on a computer to jump into the breakouts. So if you're not seeing them, that's why. But please spend some time with our school panelists. They would love to hear from you. And it's a great opportunity to kind of get to know them and get your questions answered. I hope to see many of you tomorrow and in future events. Just stay tuned to our website. We'll be running lots of events in July, which will be posted soon. And again, just really appreciate everyone making time today. So enjoy the breakouts.